friends. Welcome to the Ruth Chou Simons Podcast. It's so surreal to say it out loud, but here we are. It's a brand new year, and this podcast has a new name. But I'm here because I am so grateful to be serving you with this podcast, with conversations that are real and honest and are all about applying the gospel to our everyday lives. You may have remembered why I shared a little bit about why it is now called the Ruth Chou Simons Podcast, mainly because I am just coming to you a little bit more intimately, a little bit more personally, and you can expect conversations with others, but sometimes, and most of the time, it'll be conversations between me and you. So grab a cup of coffee, whatever it is. I've got my Americano with me today, and when I was asked by Anna here at the office, she said, what's the purpose? What's the goal of this podcast? Share that. And I said, the goal of it is for anyone who's listening or watching to know that they're not alone, to feel like we're having coffee together, where we get to just be real, a little more real than we get to be on social media, when we are at an event or through books and the pages of really beautiful and wonderful books. But sometimes we just have to have that sister to sister personal conversation between friends. And so here we are. It's a brand new year. And as I did a little reflecting on 2024, one thing that really stood out was that it was a really intense year. And for better or for worse, I had a lot more capacity than I even expected of myself. Do you ever feel that way? Do you ever get to the end of something and go, I am more capable than I thought possible? I have more capacity. I had more bandwidth. I could think and work harder, and I was a survivor. I pushed through. So I could say I'm really proud of that. But on the other side of it, I can also say, wow, I ran really hard and some things need to change. I want different rhythms for 2025. I want to um, steward my life differently. Not because something was really wrong in 2024, but because to run well and with perseverance, sometimes we need to take inventory and consider how we're prioritizing things, how we're strategizing, how we're choosing rhythms in our lives. And so I don't usually choose a word of the year, mostly because I don't have the capacity to really think clearly about one word that I'm going to anchor to or look for at all times. But if I were to think about a theme that has kind of brought me into the new year, I would say it's the word stewardship. I would say that's on top of my mind is the thought of prioritizing, how to manage what God's given me, to consider wisely what I have and what I can do with what I have, not thinking about what I don't have or trying to chase after what I would really want instead of what I have. You know what I'm talking about? So stewardship really is that management and caring for what is already yours, what's already given to you, your time, your resources, your energy, your giftings. Um, all those things are ours and they're not limitless. They don't go on forever and um, they're not just there at all times at whatever capacity. We have to consider how to use those things. And so as I consider 2025, I wanted to share some hopes and fears that I have. Um, I'd love to hear yours as well, but I'll just go first. My hopes and fears are usually two sides of the same coin. When I think about the hopes that I have, well, there's some fears tied to those hopes as well. Some of the hopes that I have would be that I am hoping to steward better, to have a better stewardship of my days, to not waste time that I could be focused on the things that really matter while worrying and fretting or wasting my time on things that don't. Some of those things could be that sometimes I'm starting off trying to just be thoughtful about how to use apps or programs or social media and thinking about these things are our tools. And before long, that kind of research or that thinking about those tools turns into feeling oppressed by those tools, feeling like I'm exhausted or that I am now bound to these tools. You know what I'm talking about? Where you start by thinking, hey, this app will be really helpful. It'll be a tool to help me steward well. But before long, I'm not stewarding the tool. The tool is bossing me. And that's one area that I have real hopes of kind of putting into submission, putting my social media into submission, putting even the rhythms of my day into submission to what I want them to be in order to honor the Lord the most. I'm a work in progress at that. I will come back and follow up on this conversation as I work those things out. But I just, at the top of the year, I just wanted to tell you and be honest that that's an area of my life that I would really love and have not just hopes, but have plans to steward better. I think we'll always be in that process. I don't know that I'll ever get to the top of a year and say, I am the best steward of everything I've got. I'd like to get better at it. But if you're listening today and you're like, yeah, I kind of look back and go, I had some opportunities I didn't use as well as I should have. Or, gosh, I had, 365 days as well. How come I didn't get further ahead? Well, rather than starting the year off feeling condemned or scared or kind of like, how did I do it wrong? I think it's an opportunity for us to go, okay, we have fears, but we have hopes as well. And those hopes come with actions that we can take. And so I guess the fear would be that I have mission drift. I think that's the best way I can put it. That my fear is that I would not lose sight, as in like I would turn out a totally different person, or I'd be completely off mission and be, you know, doing something really unrelated and be off selling cars or something. Like that's not like I'm not going to be losing sight of my mission with Grace Laced or with ministry or with my writing and speaking. It's not like I'm suddenly going to go into a different industry. It's that there would be a mission drift in the sense of my heart being led by something other than what God's called me to. So, an example of that would be if my mission drift is slow and almost imperceptible, but let's say decisions are made based on what somebody else expects of me rather than what really honors the Lord. Mission drift can happen if I'm not praying about a decision, but I kind of am forced to make a decision based on what is best for my career or what everybody expects or what will make the most financial sense. I don't really want those things. Not that those are not important decision making factors. Don't hear me wrong. Those are important decision making factors. I'm not like, hey, I don't really care how my decision affects anybody else or my career. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is a repeated um, a repeated rhythm of making decisions based on what other people want from you, what feels like most immediate success or gain, or what others think is best. That repeated process will, and I've seen little bits of this in my life, where it will cause a mission shift. You will drift in that. I've seen that in other times of my life when Troy and I were part of other local ministries. There have been times where in the process of trying to bring more people in, whether it's the local church or with school or with other kinds of ministry, you can get so easily derailed from what you're actually supposed to be doing and what brought you passion, commitment, conviction, what brought you here in the first place. You could really drift from that passion and that conviction because suddenly you care about numbers, or you care about enrollment, or you care about membership, or you care about the budget, being able to provide beautiful this or that. And suddenly you kind of just aren't making the most important things the most important things, which, by the way, is kind of like what we read in um, the letter to the church at Ephesus in Revelation, right? It's like they were doing all the right things, but they lost their first love. And so I've been thinking a lot about that at the start of 2025. What do I love? What do I love the most? And I'm not just looking for the Sunday school answer in myself or in you. Um, the 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 answer we're not just after the answer of like, of course, I love Jesus. I love Jesus. Everything's going to turn out great. No, I think that the question here is a little bit deeper than that. Like, what am I giving my life, my energy, my talents, my resources, my my mental thoughts? Like, what am I giving the most of my attention to? And that can be tracked with my time, my rhythms. That can be tracked by the decisions I'm making, what I'm making room for. We can say all day long that we really, really, really love, let's say, our local church. But if we never have time, and we rarely can make time for relationships or for service or for involvement or for prayer, um, that involves our local church, then do we really love it truly that much? That's just kind of like a low hanging fruit kind of way I assess things. But I think to go deeper than that, um, the reason why the stewardship question matters in my life right now is because there are lots of really good opportunities. There's always really good opportunities. Just pause for a quick second as I'm saying this. If you're like waiting in car line and you can pull up your phone and just jot it in your notes, do so. If you're sitting at home and you've got a notepad, just jot it down. Don't stop the car if you're driving, listening. Just make a mental note. But if you can respond, just jot down real quick. Like, what do you think you love the most? What do you feel like you give your life and your heart to? What captures your attention and your imagination and everything that means the most to you? What do you treasure the most? And then my next question would be, what do you spend the most energy, time, and resources on? What gets the most of your attention? What gets 99% of your like efforts in your heart, in your mental fortitude? What keeps you up at night thinking about it? Um, are the things on the second list the same? Do they connect with the things on the first list? You see, I notice in my own life that there's kind of a disconnect between, not always, but sometimes there's a disconnect between the first list and the second list, kind of like the church at Ephesus, right? Doing all the right things, we're doing it for the right reasons, kind of lost our first love. There's got to be a connection there. The love should point to the treasure, and the treasure should be aligned between where you give all your attention and energy and what you really believe is the greatest treasure in your life. There's the really deep, deep answers there, but there's also really simple, trackable, on the surface answers like, how are you spending your time? What is getting your attention? What do you give your money to the most? And so I hope it's okay that I went first and just got real honest there. Um, I don't think I'm doing anybody any favors if I'm an author, artist, speaker, I run a business, um, teach on stage and do all these wonderful things. And meanwhile, I have a mama to six boys who are incredible and I love them so much. And we're so healthy in so many ways. And the things that have to change, praise God, don't have to do with um, really hard. We don't have any brokenness in our family right now. And it's not that there's something broken in marriage or broken in parenting and broken in really significant spiritual ways. And that's not I can just freely say, that's not what I'm talking about. But in ways that will affect us 5 years from now, 10 years from now, will affect how well we run, the race we're running, will affect the longevity of ministry, the perseverance of our efforts. We happen to be part of a local church that we are church planting as well. Troy's preaching Sunday after Sunday, and our family is very involved in this local church. And so longevity and how we run the race really matters both on a very um, daily kind of way in our local community and in a very public way that's global. And so perhaps I should have asked these questions even a year ago when I started. Um, but I'm really asking some of these questions now in 2025, saying, if Ruth Chou Simons, and you can fill your name into this blank right here, if you are to run the race well, and if you are to run the race with endurance, with holiness, with passion, with fervor, with the gospel infusing everything you do, then you got to kind of start with, what do you love the most? What gets the treasure of your time, resources, energy, and talents? That's where my mind's at. That's where I'm at. So my fear would be to drift from my mission, would be mission drift. That would be my fear. To not steward things well, to not run with perseverance, to learn the same lessons that the Lord has for me, but take the long road around because I'm just hard of hearing and hard of heart. That would be my fear. And my hope is that I would be soft in heart and that I would implement. I've got some ideas, and my goal would be to implement everything from um, empowering those on my team to do what they're called to do so that I can be more faithful in what I'm called to do. That's one really practical implementation. Another would be that a hope and a plan would be that I would be diligent to spend the kind of quality time with my children that that would continue to be super fruitful, that we would play and rest and learn together. I'm sure there's a few more, but play, learn, rest, so important. And we've had really wonderful times of that already. It's not like that's missing, but I want a strong rhythm of it. So that's a big hope. Um, and already in motion is the hope of having a manageable, not manageable as in like, ooh, everything fits on a day planner, but manageable by way of stewardship, um, a schedule and a rhythm where I can be inspired and not just producing. I need to be inspired. I need to be able to take in beauty so that I have more to give. I need to play with watercolors and paints. I need to write things that never get published. Um, I want to sing more songs and play more instruments and take time to nurture things of the soul because we're not machines. Take a minute and just repeat that to yourself. Say it out loud. I am not a machine. I'm not a machine. I'm a child of God. I was made on purpose for a purpose. I am not a machine, and I'm not here to do tasks. I'm here to grow and become a child of God, aligned with who He wants me to be, reflecting His character. And everything that He has for me to do, I will do when I steward what I have, not reaching and trying to grasp for more, but just being faithful with what I've already been given. And so let that be our prayer. Lord, help us. Help us to steward well this new year, all that's before us. And thanks for letting me share that's where I'm at. And if if you're listening to this and you resonate, whether you picked a word for the year or not, I'll share this intention with you. You can borrow this intention of just wanting to pay attention to stewardship. just know that there's a lot more coming with this topic. I'm thinking about it. I'm journaling about it. I'm writing about it. I'm convicted and asking the Lord about time, talent, resources, energy. I'm really thinking about those things. I'd love to hear if this episode um, has resonated with you. Share your thoughts, leave a comment, send me an email. I'd love to hear where you're at and how you're going to steward this new year, 2025. The best is yet to come. Love you guys.